Today's daf is daf Lamed Daled, and we got up to Rabbi Akiva Ikla Leginzak. Okay, so we'll count down from the top, approximately 8 lines down from the top. So Rabbi Akiva shows up in a place called Ginzak, and boy, they're going to ask him a whole series of questions, fire at him one question or the other, and one of them is relevant to our sugya about vessels that absorbed yayin nesech and how you kasha them. And in all these questions, Rabbi Akiva is stumped, and he has to go and ask in the base measures to see if he can get clarification. So the first question was bo mine misanim l'shos, so ein misanim l'shos. So let's understand the Gemara's question. Let's say I had a bellyache and I didn't eat the whole morning. Can I accept upon myself a tinus shows for the hours remaining in the day so that the entire day I fasted? Although there's no such thing as a kiyum of tinus without Kabbalah, without accepting, but can I accept it midday so that at least I'll get a partial mitzvah and I might even be able to recite Anenu in Mincha because I accepted upon myself a tinus midday? If, on the other hand, let's say a person would want to accept on himself the day before, he wants to say that tomorrow I will fast until noon and then I'll eat the rest of the day. So that's also shows. No, that is out of the question. There was never a doubt about it. That would not qualify because you can't eat on a day and call that day a day tinus. In our situation, he fasted the first part of the day, but not for the purpose of tinus. He had a bellyache or there wasn't food to be had or whatever it might be. And now he wants to take the second half of the day and make it into a tinus. That's called tinus shows. And lohavi biyod. So that phrase, lohavi biyod, is going to repeat itself over and over again. And it means that Rabbi Akiva did not have, so to speak, in his hand, an answer to that question. Question number 2, kan kanim shel ovdei kolchavim asur mutarim. So you have now various kinds of earthenware jugs that were used by the idol worshippers over the course of time, and they put yayin nesach inside these jugs. The jugs therefore absorbed the taste of the wine. And the question is, do you need hechsher? Meaning, do you have to subject these earthenware utensils to hechsher? And as we said over and over again, if it's tashmisho bitzonin and it's used only in cold, then, meaning the original use of the Isur, in this case the Ayin Nesek, was only in cold, and therefore we just rinse out the Kli. There's no Blia in Sonin. Or do we say, no, we need at least a minimum amount of Hechsher? Lo Havi Biyode, again, he didn't have the answer. Then we get to the third question, and that is Bamesh Shimesh Moshe. Now, Moshe Rabbeinu, during the Shivas Yimei Miluim, served as a quasi Kohen Gadol. He was not a Kohen Gadol. And the question is, which begadim did he wear? A Kohen Gadol has to wear specific begadim, but since Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't have that status, therefore he violates Me'ilah by using these begadim when he's not a Kohen Gadol. But on the other hand, he is serving, so to speak, as a second string Kohen Gadol, so he has to wear special begadim. So what are the begadim that he wears, which are not the begadim that are designated for the Kohanim, and then Rabbi Akiva would incur, Moshe Rabbeinu would incur a chiyuv me'ilah. So what were those begadim? There had to be some special begadim. And lo havi biyod. Next. So in conclusion, we have 3 questions. We have one question about tiny shows, another question about kankanim shel ovdei kochom, and a third question about Moshe Rabbeinu during the Shivas Yimei Miluim, when he served as a kind of replacement for the Avoda, to do the Avoda. Also, Shol Beit Midrash. So Rabbi Akiva comes into the Beis Medrash where all the Chachamim are learning and studying together to ask them these questions. Amri, for the first question, they said, Hilchasa, we paskin that Misanim shows that it's a valid kiyum of tainus if you accept the tainus midday as long as you fasted the first half of the day. And Hishlim, if he continues with that half-day tainus from midday until the end of the day, then mispal tefillas tainus, he could even add the tefillah of Anenu, and he could call it biyom tzon tanisenu. It's a day of fast. On question number 2, hilchsa kankanim shel ovdei kucham liachar 12 chodesh mutarim. Interesting that if these jugs were used by the idol worshippers for yayin nesech, and yet we said that bitzonein, tashmisha bitzonein, since it was only in cold, the yayin is not absorbed, but yet we paskin that there is some element of blia, of absorption of the wine, albeit a very limited amount, and you have two options. One option is here explicit in the Gemara, and the other option is added by the Rishonim and the Poskim. The first option, which the Gemara offers, is to leave these utensils for a 12-month period of time. And after 12 months, even if there's wine that's absorbed into the walls of these jugs, but nevertheless that wine is already not capable of giving a good taste, it's been sitting there for too long. By the way, there's a common error that people think that, let's say you have kalim that you use for chametz, you could leave it for 12 months and then you could use it for matzah, for Pesach. That's not true. That's a common error. And it all begins here. People made equations and analogies from this case. But in any event, in a case of tashmisha bitzonein, then 12 months is enough. The other alternative method of kashering it is what we discussed yesterday, which is called shriya, which means you let it soak in water for 12 hours. For 24 hours. Then you change the water another 24 hours. You change it again a third time, and you let it soak for a third round of 24 hours. Bamesh shimesh Moshe shivas yimei milulim, and b'chaluk lavan Rav Kana Masni b'chaluk lavan she'ein bo imra. Okay, so this chaluk lavan, which is literally some sort of a white cloak that he wore, the Gemara says was unique in that it didn't have a hem. Now, Rashi learns a pshat here, but it's very, very almost impossible to understand this Rashi. Rashi says that Moshe Rabbeinu, when he worked in the temple area, and there was a lot of, expensive stuff, there was money that was donated and so forth and so on, the people might suspect Moshe Rabbeinu of pocketing some of that money. So therefore, the cloak that he wore was a simple cloak that didn't have a hem, and there was no place for him to put money. The problem with this pshat, and everybody yells and screams on Rashi, is that this point in time is after already the Mishkan was built, right? This is Shivas Yimei Maluim at the end of so all the donations were already used to make the Caleb. So what is it? Moshe Rabbeinu is going to take the menorah and put it in his back pocket and hide it? So there's a Tosfos here, Dibra Maschil, She'ein bo imra. In the previous Tosfos quotes the possibly Aaron Achicha to prove that it couldn't have been that Moshe Rabbeinu wore the garments of Aaron, because those garments is li Aaron Achicha, that designated exclusively for Aaron. But as far as Ein Bo Imra is concerned, he says that this has to do with the laws of Negoyim. L'hoy Bo Imra, it says, Tosfos Lefisha Bazel Yanikar Yoser Chodosh Lo Nishtamish Behedjot. And then he quotes Rabbeinu Moshe, who interprets Shaloyomru Achakak Sheshimesh Aaron Shenimtza Mum B'Moshe V'Lachein So Below Imra Sheyedu Akol Shalohoya Dover Miskayim Mashloya Mishamish Shesh Farshim Imra Kmo. Anyway, he has a whole slew of interpretations. I don't think I know I have one in.
Can you steal this?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So again, just to summarize a couple of the interpretations of Tosfos, we have one interpretation that Tosfos says it has to do with the fact that it shouldn't look like it has kilayim in it if it's white, or perhaps nobody would suspect that Moshe Rabbeinu was removed from his state of kahuna when he was replaced by Aaron, and therefore he would wear a white beged. Anyway, a whole slew of interpretations. We go on. Hachartzanim, the Mishnah says, Vazogim shel ovdei kochom. So these are various parts of grapes, whether they're seeds or peels, and they used to soak it in water, and they had a certain wine from it, but it's not really the original wine, and therefore we have a machlok shin Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim that's recorded in the Mishnah. According to Rabbi Meir, it's wine for all purposes, and yayin esach is also not only b'shtia but also b'hana. You can't have any benefit from it. The Chachamim say no, we're going to be machmir. It's really not wine meikar adin. It's made from the peels and the seeds, but because it has a taste of wine, we're not going to allow you to drink it, but you're allowed to benefit from it, and you could sell it. Tana Rabbana, we learned in a brisa. And now the brisa is going to differentiate between two types of peels and seeds. There's one type which is called lachim. They still have moisture to them, and therefore there's some yayin that's coming out of them. And then we have something called yaveshim, and the Gemara is going to say that after a certain period of time, 12 months, it becomes yavesh. It becomes so dry that there's no moisture, no liquid of yayin, and therefore lachem asurim v'yaveshim mutar. So you're allowed to leave these seeds and peels for a period of 12 months, and then they're yavesh. Once they're yavesh and there's no lachus, there's no moisture, then there's no wine here, and you could enjoy it. Gemara says, "Haininu lach and haininu yaveshim." How do we know when it's considered lach and yavesh? And I would have anticipated the Gemara would answer by saying, let's, see if you can rub it on your hands and get any moisture from it. But the Gemara gives a flat, absolute rule. Lachim kol shnei m'asar chodesh and yaveshim le'achar shnei m'asar chodesh. It all depends on 12 months. After 12 months, it's considered yavesh and it's mutter. Itmar, Amar Rabba bar Bachana Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Kishehein asurim afilu b'hana, kshe mutarim afilu b'achila. So now Rabbi Yochanan seems to be accepting the perspective and the ruling of Rabbi Meir. And he's saying that if they are lachim, and therefore they're asurim, they're still within the 12-month period of time, and they're moist, and therefore there's wine, then it has the full din, 100% status of yayin nesach, and therefore it's also even bahana. If, on the other hand, it's without, meaning it's outside the 12 months, it's already yavesh, it's already dried up, then it's mutter, it's absolutely mutter. Now Tosfos says that Rabbi Meir is of the opinion that wine that's made from these seeds or peels and they're byproducts of the grapes, they are classified and defined as wine. According to Chachamim, on the other hand, basically, once it dries out, it has the status of eitz. Eitz means it's wood, and it's not wine, and it's not grapes, and you could do whatever you want with it. You could drink it, you could eat it, you could sell it on the market. Omer Rav Zvid, hi durdaya. Okay, we have to figure out what the word durdaya means. The chamra of wine darmayoi from the Arameans. So you'll see that according to Tosfos, the word durdaya refers to sediments. Now, the sediments are the parts of the grapes that float down to the bottom of the barrel, and they used to take the rest of the barrel, the contents of the barrel, which is liquid wine, and they'd sell it as wine. Then when they had the sediments, they would soak the sediments in water, and the water would absorb the tam of yayin. And this was something that was very popular amongst the Armenians, and they would create this wine out of durdaya, out of sediments. And Rav Zvid Paskins that Basa Tracer Yachi Shata Shar. Again, we're going to apply the 12-month rule. And we're going to say that after 12 months, it no longer has the taste of wine. Because again, this was weak wine to begin with. It was only made with water soaked, soaking sediments. And another option for this possible 12-month period of time, let's say in a kli, if the jug had absorbed that taste of the sediments, would be shriya, like we said, to switch the water every 24 hours. Omar Rab Chaviva. Interesting. Today, the word Chaviva is a feminine name. But back in the time of the Gemara, Chaviva was a name for a man. And he was the son of Rava. Hani Gulfe. Okay, we have to know what Gulfe is. But Gulfe basically are receptacles. And again, you're talking about receptacles that were used by the idol worshippers to store their wine. So the wine is yayin nesech. And once again, we're going to apply the 12-month rule. Basar, tracer, yachi, shata, shari. Either you wait out the 12-month period of time, and then you're allowed to use these jugs from the idol worshippers, because again, it's blia bitzonim. Or alternatively, you do the shriya every 24 hours, 3 times over. Amar of Chaviva Hani.